Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the international webinar organized by the Department of English, St. Mary's College, Thrissur. Our college is the first women's college in Thrissur and is celebrating the 75th year of establishment this year. When we look around these days, we realize this is the time we realize virtuality is reality. At this juncture, it is very important that we look at the future with hope and strive forward. Presentations are the vital part of academic world, and each day new windows are open. Yes, I know, to err is human, but we need to try our level best to eradicate all the errors to become the real professionals. Hence, the importance of the topic handling miscommunications in presentations and public speaking. I'm really overwhelmed to introduce the presenter of the day, Vicky Hale. 2 weeks back, I had the opportunity to attend an international seminar where I witnessed the mesmerizing presentation skills of Vicky, and how I wished if I could have her here with us so that many more of us will benefit her unique expertise. Vicky is the English Language Fellow, now an alumni at the US Department of State. She holds an M.Ed in TESOL and World Language Education from the University of Georgia. Vicky taught ESL for 5 years in the US to adults and later spent 10 years in Russia teaching business English to the university students. In addition to her teaching experience, Vicky has a strong background in women's rights and healthcare services. Now, during the age of virtual learning, Vicky hopes to instill courage and versatility into all her audience as we continue to learn to communicate, especially cross-culturally. St. Mary's College welcomes you, dear Vicky ma'am. I also welcome our principal, Sister Dr. Maggie Jose, our vice principal, Sister Dr. Sandra Teresa, and all my colleagues to this webinar. With a heart full of happiness, I also welcome all the participants from far and near to this academic session. Now, Sister Dr. Maggie Jose, our beloved principal, is joining us for the inaugural session. Thank you.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Psalm 23, verses 1. Greetings to all from St. Mary's College, Thrissur. I extend a warm welcome to Miss Vicky A. Hale, the resource person of the day, and all the participants. On this fine day, I feel privileged to address an erudite community who have gathered here from different parts of the world to take part in the international webinar on handling miscommunications in presentation and public speaking by Miss Vicky A. Hale. This occasion is once again proving that the academic community is not at all distanced in this period of social distancing. I appreciate relentless efforts of the Department of English to host this event. May this webinar be a successful one. Hereby I declare the international webinar as inaugurated. Stay safe, stay healthy. Over to the resource person, Ms. Vicky A. Hale.
Hear me? I'm not used to Google Meet, so please forgive me
Yes.
in advance.
Yes, we can hear you, Vicky.
Great,
Yes.
thanks. So I'm so happy to be with all of you and to talk about this very important subject of communicating and miscommunicating. And I will have to interject a few things about communicating online because that seems to be what we are doing a lot of these days. So I just want to thank you for the warm welcome. And I want to tell you that I'm going to be showing you a PowerPoint, so you probably won't see me during the PowerPoint, but I will be there. You will hear me. And then at the end, we will have question and answers. I will have time for that. So I want to ask that don't do a lot of chatting in the chat box right now, because we may not be able to see your questions. So save your questions, save them for the end, and we will have plenty of time for that. Okay? Thank you again. I'm very happy to be here. And today we're talking about mostly handling miscommunications, but I have to set a foundation for that. So I'm going to get my PowerPoint up here and we will begin. Okay, can someone give me a heads up that you can see my PowerPoint? We're going to be talking about handling miscommunications in English conversations and
Yes,
in
we're able to see.
Great, thank you so much. Okay. All right, so what do you all think about when someone talks to you about improving your English and your English communications? Do you think about people who are maybe a little arrogant or nerdy or antisocial or superior in some way? Sometimes we think of stereotypes when we think of improving our English. But I want instead for you to think about creativity and communicating and commonalities in a country that has so many languages. How does English help you to be creative? How does it help you to be a better communicator or presenter or someone who finds ways to relate to other people? Today, we're going to talk about 4 things concerning communicating and miscommunicating. First of all, the reasons why we should improve our English. And the second part will be improving our communication skills. I want to lay that foundation before we talk about the mistakes, the obstacles, or the miscommunications that stand in the way of being understood and understanding. And then fourth, we'll talk about presentations and public speaking. So part 1, the first question that we ask ourselves or other people ask us or we ask others: why should we study or learn or improve our English? I would like to make 4 suggestive reasons and talk about them each one briefly. First of all, because I think improving our English and our communication skills dispels stereotypes. It's also very professional because it shows respect and it demonstrates to build relationships because it builds bridges. And it develops the mind beyond just reading and writing. So let's first talk about stereotypes. Are there really stereotypes that come with speaking or not speaking English? There are stereotypes about genders and nationalities, castes, types of workers, and yes, even language. Sometimes people even think less of you, or they think you're less intelligent because they have a stereotype stuck in their mind, no matter how wrong that is. Sometimes people even think that you're deaf, and so they speak louder instead of slower, or they use signals. They think you're mute or ignorant or illiterate. English is not just for the elite. We want to learn English, not, now listen very carefully to what I say here, not to have power over people, but to have power under them, to serve them and care for them. When you hear one story about someone, you form a stereotype. It's very dangerous because it closes your mind and it delivers a negative attitude. But dispelling stereotypes opens people's minds and presents a positive attitude. I'm sure the moment you heard that an American was going to speak to you, there was a stereotype that came to your mind. And I hope I can dispel that stereotype if it was negative. Some people say that English is a power language, but remember, power under and not power over. Language can be a way to serve other people. And that brings us to professionalism. You know, English is the fastest growing language around the world. There are about 1.75 billion people, more than people who live in India, who speak the language. That's almost 25% of the world's population, which is over 7.5 billion people now. English is often a common language, as I've mentioned before, in many multicultural settings. English is not just used in everyday situations, it's used in businesses and professional settings all over the world. Learning and improving and speaking English is not just a fun and interesting thing to do. It's an important career move. English opens doors of opportunities. And as I mentioned before, and I'm going to mention it again, English breaks professionalism and English breaks stereotypes. And it leads to success, no matter how you define the word success. Even success in relationships. English, as I mentioned, is often, and especially here in India, a common language that helps build relationships because it builds bridges. You Indians have such a very special gift of multilingualism. And when you speak the language of another person, it touches their heart. I live in Vizag, Visakhapatnam, where the language is Telugu. And when I attempt to speak this language, people smile and they chatter away and I don't always understand them. But when we don't know the native language, it's good to know the common one. Back in the 1970s, there was a term that was coined. It was called Communicative Competence. And it looks at speaking in more than just terms of grammar, but also social settings, interactive techniques such as two-way communication. It's actually a skill that 21st century employers look for, but it's also important in relationships. For example, if you speak without allowing another person to speak, it's called a monologue, not a dialogue. Taking turns is vital for any relationship. That's why I have to have question and answers at the end. So we have a two-way communication. And we're going to talk about communication tips in just a moment. Relationships are built through communications, and it shows a concern for others when we listen and respond. And that's called compassion. So if you want to establish friendships outside of your own state or even country, English will again be a common language and it will build connections. The fourth reason why you should study, learn, and improve your English is for the development of the mind. Now, I'm not a neurological person or even a psycholinguistic, but I know that the brain is an incredible organ. Being analytical and pondering inquisitively and thinking critically are all aspects of the left side of the brain. The right side incorporates more of our creativeness and our imagination. So if we want to develop, we have to use both sides, right? That's why I've come to believe that literacy goes far beyond reading and writing. It extends to culture and even media. Some of you might be familiar with Bloom's taxonomy, the classifying of learning objectives. I'm not going to give you a lesson on that today. That's a lesson for a whole nother day. But notice how Bloom's taxonomy goes from knowing and remembering to comprehending and understanding to applying what we've learned and analyzing it to ultimately synthesizing, evaluating, and creating. So today, I want you to think of English helping you in this process that goes from learning or just remembering to creating something original, unique. That's right. Literacy goes beyond reading and writing. It extends to media, a source that is important whatever field you are in, okay? Your own media literacy will be enhanced and improved if you speak and understand and can analyze in English. Because to be media literate, we need to check multiple sources. Right now, I'm even developing a seminar on media literacy because it's so important right now. And I'm going to give you an example. But I think that we have to be able to look at media news from different perspectives and different sources. So here's an example, all right? I heard that Bill Gates was testing a vaccine here in India and had killed thousands of children. Well, that didn't settle very well with me. And I know quite well the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I searched the news and I found 3 false claims about this. Okay, Bill Gates Foundation did not paralyze and kill children while testing a vaccine, but I had to check and find these false proclamations. I'm learning to be media literate myself, and English is an important means to that end. So I had to bring that up because literacy is far more than just reading and writing. It is speaking, it is listening, and it is learning to communicate well in different modes and not just oral or written now. Obviously, I'm communicating with you right now through my voice, but also through different modes of pictures and words. So we know why we need to pay attention to our English. So let's talk about the foundation of communication skills. Because just as you would cultivate your curiosity for the world and for people around the world, you need to do the same for your English. Discover its uniqueness, its role in your life, how it works, how you can benefit from it. So I'm sure you've all seen this little chart before, especially in high school, probably when you were learning about communication, all right? Because even in monologues, even right now, even though I am the sender and you are the receiver, there's always a receiver. So I want to start with that. I want to start with the receiver, the one hearing the message. That's you guys. You can play an active part by being an active listener. I have a disadvantage. I can't see you right now, but I saw your faces before we began, and your smiles are still in my thoughts and in my mind. But an active listener needs to pay attention, nod their head, look at the speaker. Don't talk while others are talking, smile, and use discourse markers, things like, oh yes, I see, etc. All right? An active listener looks and leans, all right? Right now, you can't see me, but I want you to know I'm leaning forward. I'm not resting my hands on my head and I'm not acting bored, and I hope that you're not either. But when you lean forward, you show the listener that you're really paying attention. Okay? This thing about talking while others are talking, I know the first thing that comes to your mind, especially you teachers, is in the classroom. It's so frustrating when the teacher is talking and people are talking. Well, that's even important when we're having a webinar. That's why in the beginning I said, don't do too much chatting in the chat box, because that's like talking while somebody else is speaking. And it's very, well, impolite actually to talk while others are talking. Okay. All right. The next thing is don't interrupt. Wait until the speaker is finished to ask your questions or make a comment. Unless, of course, the other speaker says, interrupt me at any time. That's a different story. Okay? Because it's really difficult if you're thinking also about the next thing that you want to say, you're missing something that is being said. Laugh only at jokes, not at
Excuse me,
mistakes.
ma'am.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry for interrupting. Actually, your presentation is not there. Somebody presented in between, so your presentation is not seen. Can you present it again? Sorry.
I'm sorry, what are you asking me?
Ma'am, your PPT is not presenting right now. Can you present it again?
All right, let's try. How about now?
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, it's visible. It's visible, Vicky ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right. So we're talking about being an active listener. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate that. That's a good reason to interrupt, by the way. All right. Look and lean. Don't talk while others are talking. Don't interrupt. Laugh only at jokes. All right. Now, this is really important for the receiver to ask for clarification. That was really good when they interrupted me and said, you know, we can't see your PowerPoint. But when you're having a two-way conversation also, when you as the receiver do not understand, you must ask for clarification. It's okay to say, would you please repeat that? Could you say that in some way, in some other way? Or please slow down. Please slow down. So I think asking for clarification is not always done, but it's really important. So those are the things that as a receiver, you need to keep in mind in your communications. And you're going to see why when we talk about the miscommunications that you put these into action. Okay, now as the sender, let's go on to the sender. This is the same sort of chart, just a little bit different, one that you might have seen when you were in high school learning about communication. So now you're the sender, you're the messenger. And this first term is mostly used with linguistics people, so you might not have heard it before. Negotiate meaning. But think about negotiation as obtaining an agreement by discussion. When you negotiate, you have something going back and forth. And this is important because you're not always understood, and you might need to restate. You might need to ensure that somebody understands before you go on, before you move forward. Okay, so you need to learn, you need to cover different ways to find out whether your receiver is understanding. It's in a classroom or one-on-one, you can ask questions. And I usually suggest people ask better questions than, do you understand? Because they're always going to say yes, but they don't always understand. So you need to learn to ask good questions. From my point of view, what do you think about what I've just said? Or maybe you can say, how do you understand the meaning of negotiate? Then you can make sure that someone is understanding. You can ask a simple question about something that is just said. Don't ask what my husband usually asks me. He usually says, what did I just say? Don't ask that. All right, learning to ask good questions is a beneficial thing to learn. Good questions are not yes or no questions. All right, now bear with me a little bit here while we talk about stress, intonation, and rhythm. All right, this is something that you need to practice. You can practice with YouTube videos, you can practice with a friend or a teacher, but stress is everything in English. As you know, we're a stress-based language. And when you just take a simple sentence like, I never said he stole my money, you can change the meaning of this sentence by changing the stress in each word. You've heard this before, many of you, I'm sure. Just listen for a minute. I never said he stole my money. 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 Maybe he just borrowed it. I never said he stole my money. It was somebody else's. I never said he stole my money. Okay? So you get the idea with stress. Intonation. Intonation indicates questions, sarcasm, worry. Okay? It's the fall, rise, fall, or the flat tone of your voice. That's intonation. Let's take a couple of examples. This first word, if I have a sharp fall, it's surprise, right? But if I have a rise fall, it shows realization. Or if I have a slow fall, it shows cuteness. Or if it's just long and flat, it shows fear. Okay. And the word what? Think about the different meanings of this word depending on the rise, fall, or flat. Okay. What? Sharp rise, right? Means surprise. Or what? Long flat, confusion. Or sharp fall. What? Irritation. All right. So intonation, these are all things. I mean, these are classes that you can attend or things that you can look for on YouTube videos. But one thing to keep in mind when we're talking about practicing the music of English, it's thought groups. Rather than pausing after each word, practice looking at the words and make one thought and give a very slight pause after them. Now, sometimes you see this grammatically by commas, but not always. All right. To identify a thought group, simply listen for the speaker to pause before and after them, but not within. Listen to this example. Listen for my pauses, and there won't always be commas there. Sometimes when I go to bed, I like to read beforehand. This allows my brain to calm down and prepare itself for sleep. It also helps me because I always overthink before I go to bed, and I stress about the details of the next day. So there were about 7 or 8 thought groups in that one sentence. There was a slight pause, no comma, always, but it really helps people to understand what you're saying when you speak in thought groups. So stress, intonation, and rhythm. The music of English. It's used in poetry, prose, conversation, presentations. They're all a part of making meaning in your communications. And last but not least, body language. Eye contact, open arms, handshakes, wimpy handshakes or firm handshakes, head nods. You need to learn the importance of nonverbal cues. There's a very fun video. We're not going to play it now because of audio and such, but I'm going to put the link to this friend's video. It's about 4 minutes long at the end in the chat box, and you can remind me if I forget so that you can watch it on your own. But here are, I don't think you heard that, right? So, well, here's the chart that I made after listening to that. All right. So there are facial expressions and gestures that convey shock, or you can convince someone with eye contact, or you can show that you're giving up, or you can show disgust with your hands and your arms. There are physical appearance. In the video, you'll see kind of the disgust that they had to this one guy who had a long beard and he looked real scraggly. But then the same guy later was all clean shaven, and there was a whole new outlook for that guy. So physical appearance can change the perception. You can be upset with someone by the space. You can move away from someone and give space if you're upset with someone. And also through your posture, you can show interest or boredom. And then finally, we already talked about this, so I won't spend much time on it, but paralinguistic signals the pitch of your voice to give different meaning to different words, the tone, which can convey sarcasm, and also emotion through prosody, rhythm, and volume. When I speak loudly or angrily or more calmly, which is, I like that about Indian people. They are so much more calm than Americans. But nonverbal cues contribute greatly to understanding. And so it's a great lead in to our talk on miscommunication. Miscommunication. Of course, you know the prefix mis. The prefix mis means ill, mistaken, miscommunication, or it could be wrong. So in other words, we're looking at wrong communication. All right. This is a good example. I know that you believe you understand what you think I said, but I am not sure that you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. Yes, miscommunication, or this cartoon. My words came out fine. They were processed incorrectly by your brain. All right, so let's look at a few ways, both on the receiver side and the sender side, where we have miscommunication. Taking offense, insult, or criticism are often overreacted to, rather than slowly and considerately trying to empathize and put yourself in someone else's shoes. You need to choose your words carefully. And you need to learn, I need to learn every day to let some things go. They're not important. Let them just roll off my shoulders instead of taking offense. Blame or hurt. Sometimes with our words or tones, we accuse or condemn. And we need to intentionally sometimes shift to wonder and amazement at individuals and appreciation, and have that heart of gratitude instead of blame or hurt. Vulnerability, I want to speak about this because it's really a trending topic in the United States. It was often thought of as a weakness, but instead has turned to a strength, the strength of openness rather than being open as a weakness. There's a book called Daring Greatly, How the Courage to be Vulnerable Transforms the Way That We Live or Parent or Lead. It's by Dr. Brene Brown, and you can find some of her short videos also and TED Talks on YouTube. But she describes vulnerability as uncertainty, the risk and emotional exposure, but how it is the birthplace of love and belonging, joy and courage, and even empathy. And more 21st century employers are saying they're looking for empathetic people. We always thought of that as a soft skill, but soft skills are as important these days as hard skills. So I think openness, the openness that makes you vulnerable, is also what makes you beautiful, attractive, even delightful, because you are real. And people like to hear you be real and not think that you have a mask on. So misunderstanding often happens in cross-cultural situations with words. And I want to give you an example. Okay, we've been on lockdown, and about the beginning of May, it was my birthday. And in our little WhatsApp staff group, people were wishing me happy birthday. And I wrote a text. I said, "Hello, strangers. Thank you for the birthday messages." Well, a couple minutes later, I got a private text from one of my colleagues who said, "Why did you call us strangers?" And I could tell that she was hurt. And I said to her that in America, when we haven't seen someone in a while, when we say hello, stranger, it just means hi, I haven't seen you in a while. But I had to explain that, and it was taken, and I had to apologize. And I learned, I'm always learning about cross-cultural situations, but that's one that comes to my mind very recently. So these are mistakes that we often make, but I call them missed takes if they are disregarded and not considered. We just say, oh, well, that person just doesn't understand me. We disregard and we miss an opportunity to build relationship, to think about the words that we've used and how they have different connotations for different people and situations. So with miscommunication in mind, I want you to think about working across cultures. Think about working in teams. Sometimes teams even take place with people from several different countries. But also, when we think about big picture, we are often putting ourselves in a different culture. But I'm a big picture person, so I like to think about that. So I have a few suggestions for you. First of all, do your homework. Think about aspects of other cultures, the organizations that you are dealing with, and techniques. Before I speak to any group, I often look at their college and what their mission statement is, what their vision is, so that I feel that I'm connected to it. And different organizations have different techniques. Keep your eyes open when you're in another situation, not so much online, but in person. Notice people, notice their nonverbal messages. The warm smile that you all gave me when we were sitting waiting for this to start made me feel so welcome. And a warm smile goes a long way. Take your time. I'm going to talk about confidence building things when we talk about presentations and public speaking. But I want you to keep in mind that confidence actually comes from being patient and caring for people. Once you begin to do that, people feel your confidence. Accept uncertainty and appreciate diversity. This is something I've learned in India. One of the most diverse, I always thought America was diverse, but India is one of the most diverse nations that I've ever lived in. I've been here now for almost 10 months. But I've also learned to accept some things as uncertain. Some things I will never understand, but I accept them as part of diversity. So the result is that stereotypes are dispelled. Professionalism is projected. Relationships are built, and your mind is developed. Because remember, literacy is more complex than just reading and writing. We can be media literate and cultural literate. So my suggestion to you, it's not an easy formula for better communication and understanding and empathy, but if I may be so bold as to suggest one adjective verb combination. Is someone trying to interrupt me? Do you need something? No. Humility and edification. To be humble is to be genuine, sincere, modest, unpretentious. It is not, as Lewis once said, it's not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less, putting other people first. Edification means to think about our words, all right? When you edify, You enlighten someone. You build them up with your words. You instruct and you empower other people by words that you say, opportunities that you give them. So edification is words, but it's also opportunities of expression and encouragement. And I think it has to start here at this point with one-on-one communication before you ever speak in public. All right, that's our clue to go to part 4. Part 4, the 4 P's of a presentation. Pine for, prepare, practice, and present. I know that first word, pine for, it's not often used here in India. So I want to just define it in case you have never used it. But to pine for something means to yearn intensely and persistently. So you have to start first and foremost with a strong and tenacious desire for something. All right? It means you have to be determined to seek something that you value. You have to want to do a presentation before you can do it successfully. You have to think to yourself, what are the benefits? What are the benefits of what I'll be doing? You have to think about your own enthusiasm. What will change socially, professionally, or emotionally by this? You have to think about the satisfaction and the pleasure that you will accumulate. Think of how proud you will be of your personal accomplishment. And I'm saying all these things because so many people have come to me since I've been teaching in India saying that they have stage fear. And so it has to start with this. You won't overcome your stage fear by just saying, I won't be afraid, I won't be afraid, I won't be afraid, all right? So you have to want it, okay? This is where you must start. Theodore Roosevelt, a president of ours in the beginning of the 20th century, once said, believe you can, and you're halfway there. Okay, so this is the beginning of a presentation. When I was first asked to do a presentation for all of you, I thought about all of these things. Why do they want to hear this? What are the benefits that they will receive and that I will receive? Am I enthusiastic about it? I hope that you can tell I am. And then also I just thought about how satisfied I would be to reach people with something that they really want to hear. Then the second step is preparation. And I talk to my students a lot about preparing for their essays, preparing for their interviews, preparing for a presentation. You can't skip this step. What does it mean to prepare? You must know thoroughly what you are going to talk about. You can't feel comfortable unless you have thought about it and planned what you're going to say. So preparation is not just reading a book or an article, although reading might be helpful, but you can't just lift canned thoughts out of a book. You have to digest it, assimilate it. You have to fully understand and integrate it into your mind and into your own thoughts to fully understand. If you like something that you read, you need to incorporate it into your life. I get lots of ideas from the internet, from books that I read, articles that I read. So then I make a note. I have a reflection and a brainstorming journal that I use, and then I have to think about it, and I have to contemplate, and I have to ask myself if I'm using it in my own life. Then you can talk about it knowledgeably. Okay, so preparation is not just writing a bunch of phrases or sentences and then memorizing them. I know that you're good memorizers. No, preparation means thinking, meditating, recalling, contemplating, and then selecting the ones that appeal to you the most, and you work them into a beautiful mosaic. And then, sorry, forgot about my pictures. And then you can practice, all right? This is the best step for getting over stage fear. practicing. Yes, pining for. Yes, preparing. But practice, practice, practice. This is the second thing that breeds confidence. Okay? There's a famous psychologist, William James, and he wrote that action seems to follow the feeling. But I'm not a psychologist, and I don't exactly want to disagree with him, but I feel that action and feeling kind of go together. So if you regulate the action, we can indirectly regulate the feeling, which is not there yet. Okay? I call this fake it till you make it. All right. Let me give you an example. Let's say that you are not feeling very cheerful about something and you have to go do something. But if you act cheerful, then the feeling kind of comes along with it. Or if you don't feel so brave and you begin to act brave and you, again, Theodore Roosevelt, he was a great speaker, so I have to use him. He talked about acting as if he was not afraid, and he gradually ceased to be afraid. So I think actions and feelings work together. All right? So you have this message. You've prepared it. You're practicing it. Now, another key to getting over stage fear is to think of yourself as a telegram boy. We don't have telegrams anymore, so I know that's kind of hard. So I have a picture here of an old-fashioned telegram. So the message, okay, this is the thing. Keep the message in your mind. Keep your heart in it. Know it like the back of your hand. Believe in it. Because then when you talk about it, you're believing what you speak about. Keep your mind on the message. All right? When a telegram boy comes to a house with a telegram, they want the message. They don't care about the messenger. The most important thing is the message. I had to remember that when I knew you were going to see my face. You want the message, not me. I got the message for you. Okay? They want the message. Keep your mind on the message and your earnest desire for the audience to hear it, to get it, to embrace it. Okay? The best way to develop self-confidence in speaking is to speak. What topics do you speak about while you're practicing? Anything that interests you. A lot of people tell me that they have stage fear. So overcoming stage fear, the two best keys, prepare and practice. Take a deep breath, stand confident, and let your feelings and actions work together. Now you're ready to present. All right? So I think that we're getting close to me finishing. I want to make sure to have time. I think we're on until 1, so we'll have time for questions. I'll try to finish this in the next 5 or 6 minutes. Okay? The presentation. The first thing that you have to do is understand the register. All right? Some people don't understand that word register, but the register is the audience, the roles, and the subjects, and the mode. Okay? All of those things working together. So let's talk first about the audience, the roles of everybody. Okay? These are connected. Who is your audience? I had to ask Bindu ma'am, who am I going to be speaking to? And it's a wide audience. So I've tried to put in things for everybody, right? Because some of you are students, researchers, teachers. Some of you probably have more experience than me teaching, all right? So, but you need to know who your audience is and the roles that they play. And what role do you play? Look at the age, the gender, the knowledge of the subject, and why do they need this message? Remember at the beginning, I talked about why you need this message? To dispel stereotypes, to be professional, to build relationships, to develop your mind. So you want to think about that. Why does your audience need this message? Okay, then there's the subject, all right? And this is more than just the topic idea. You need to think about, are you informing or persuading or describing or telling a story? Because there are certain phrases and words that have different functions that we use for different purposes. And that's a whole nother lecture also, systemic functional linguistics, but we're not going to get into that today. But language has functions, and you need to think about their jobs, words, jobs, phrases, okay? And then the mode, okay? So it's more, it used to be just, is it written or spoken? But obviously nowadays we have to consider media and forms of presentation. Is it formal? Is it informal? Tends to be a little bit less formal in our homes, right? Or is it in between? Often, as in the case of a webinar, it's multimedia and it's semi-formal, oral, with video and pictures along with words and a PowerPoint. So I'm going to talk in a minute about PowerPoints because I think that they're important. Okay, so I'm going to say a few words about PowerPoints because often, even though you're 21st century people, you may not always have been schooled on making PowerPoint presentations or the best way to make a presentation. So I want to say a few words about engaging your audience. Engaging your audience in two parts, not long parts, short parts. I hope I haven't lost you yet. Okay. So first thing I want to say though is if you are only given 5 or 10 minutes, do not use a PowerPoint. They take too long. Okay. More and more CEOs of large organizations are requiring fewer PowerPoints in meetings to save time. Okay. So if you have to show a picture, that's one thing, but don't use a PowerPoint for short presentations. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about good and bad PowerPoint slides. There's lots of tutorials on YouTube, so use them. I won't spend a lot of time here, but I do want to say a few words. I want to say that good PowerPoint slides have less words, they have a clear font, and the background is simple. Bad PowerPoints have too many pictures, too many bullet points, and the background is distracting. Also, good PowerPoints animate, as I'm doing, 1 point at a time. Otherwise, you put the whole slide up there and they're busy reading the whole slide while you're trying to talk. So point by point, use animation in your PowerPoints. Engaging your audience, part 2. Okay, this is almost the same as writing an essay. If some of my students are listening here, they're probably thinking, oh, this is the same as she says when we're writing an essay. And there are some similarities. And the first is the hook, the introduction, all right? So when you write a hook in an essay, you try to catch the reader's attention. When you have a hook for a presentation, you want to get your audience's attention and you want to build rapport, okay? So grab their attention, and there are different strategies that you can use depending on your audience. You can tell a story, you can begin with a dialogue, you can use figurative language, a joke, perhaps if it's relevant, a question, a quotation, a statistic. All right, those are all good hooks to begin to build rapport. What is rapport? It's like an understanding, a connection, an affinity, like-mindedness that you try to do at the beginning of your presentation. Okay, remember also that you have to know your topic. So you tell your audience why they want to hear this message. You can use words like success, happiness, joy, inspiration, the greater good, professionalism, development of the mind. Why are you going to tell them this information? Okay. So remember at the beginning of my presentation, I showed some pictures of stereotypes, and I wanted you to listen so that you can learn how to dispel stereotypes and be professional, etc. So the next is to be conscious of time. When I practiced this presentation, I timed myself. I'm actually a couple of minutes over the time that I had timed myself, but we'll still have time for questions. I'm almost finished. Be conscious of time. If somebody gives you 5 or 10 minutes, don't take 20 minutes. For short presentations, especially, keep it simple. When you have more time, you can add more complexities, as I did. All right. And then so that you want to make sure that your points are clear. And your conclusion. This is as important as the introduction, you guys, because you want to finish strong, okay? A conclusion can do a couple of things in a presentation, just like in an essay. It can be a summary, or it can intertwine or all the parts that you are bringing together, or you can end with a recommendation, an opinion, a question. What is your next step to better English? Could be my conclusion. You can end in some similar ways that might hook your audience as you did in the beginning. Think of your purpose when you conclude. My purpose is to get you to act, to think about ways that you are going to improve your English communication skills. So, this is your last chance to make a strong final impression. A good introduction will leave a good impression on your audience. It will give them the incentive to continue paying attention to what you're saying. However, if you leave them with a weak conclusion or ending, that's probably what they're going to remember. So don't end by saying, that's all, folks. That's all I have for you today. Okay? And don't end with the thank you slide. You want to persuade, a call to action. Learning is not a spectator sport. I want you to play. I want you to learn English so you can play the game of relationship building and being professional. Okay? Create your future, or set a goal, or dream a dream. Live, learn, work hard. Begin the journey with a single step. Row upstream, get started. These are all things that you can do as we conclude handling miscommunications. And I'm back. Let me cancel my presentation here. So we're ready for questions now. I'm going to open the chat, or you can unmute. How do you want to handle questions, Bindu ma'am?
They can ask through the chat boxes.
Okay, I see one right here. Please give examples of the kind of questions that can be asked to get interest from your audience, if not yes or no questions. All right. Well, that does depend on your audience. That's a good question, Rashi. If you have a large audience, you may just want to ask a yes or no question to get them to nod and to engage, okay, if you have a large audience. If you have a classroom, I don't like to ask, do you understand? I like to think of what I've just been saying and ask one or two. So how did you understand that statement about negotiating meaning? What did you think when I said you have to pay attention to nonverbal cues? What nonverbal cues do you think are important? So build your questions out of your presentation, okay? Especially in your classroom. If you have audience, you are much more limited in what you can, unless you have a chat box or you have I've seen some where they have like a WhatsApp group, and so they tell people, send me your questions and I'll answer them at the end if people have questions about things. So it has to be handled differently depending on different audiences. Okay, let me see what else we have here. Can everyone see me? Now I want you to see me.
Yes, ma'am. Hi. Yeah. Hi, ma'am.
Okay.
Myself, Rini Vijors. I wanted to ask you, when we are giving a presentation, especially to the kids, not bigger kids, but they are teaching in a school. So can we always start with a story? Because I feel that stories are more effective when you start with the story. They tend to listen to you, especially for kids. I am talking, not smaller kids, middle school. So when we start a presentation, can we imply a story and then finish it with a quote relating to what we want to say?
Okay, good question. Very good question. First of all, yes, when I was talking about hooks, I said anecdote, but that's what I mean. Some story, yes, stories are very good, especially if they're about you, because then people feel like they're getting to know you a little bit more. So stories are wonderful things. Don't make them too long. Try to make your stories short. Now, as far as ending with a quote, it does depend on the purpose of your presentation. Now, if you're just informing, then yes, you may want to end with a quote. But if it's a call to action, maybe you want to end with a question, or maybe you want to say, what are you going to do to whatever your lesson was? What are you going to do today to improve your English communications? Are you going to practice your stress intonation? And
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
so there are different ways to end, but yes, of course you can end with a quotation also. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Icebreaker. Oh, wow. I love icebreakers. Somebody asked about icebreakers. So I have files of icebreaker questions and I use them all the time. Whenever I do a presentation live, a workshop, I always do an icebreaker like speed networking, and I have questions and they have 1 minute to go to somebody and ask a question. Or you can get in you can ask people to, it depends on if it's related to what you're doing. Okay, but icebreakers are excellent. So keep your files of icebreakers open so you can do different icebreakers. I think they're wonderful tools, and I think it helps to lighten up the environment. I'm trying to learn some icebreakers for large audiences. That's difficult because I don't want to give them too much time and I lose them. So I'm learning more about online things like icebreakers and games right now. But icebreakers are wonderful tools. Good questions. Could you provide the link for the Friends video? Oh, thanks for reminding me. Yeah, let me open up. I saved it. I think it's still probably in my, there it is. Okay, so you have, don't watch it now. Don't watch it till we're finished. But there's the,
hello, ma'am.
If you don't get the link, just go to YouTube and Google Friends Non-Verbal Cues and it'll come up. Brainstorming questions. Wait, somebody just had something about brainstorming questions. Brainstorming questions could be asked before presentation. Yes, there's one little complication with that is if they brainstorm too much about something and you're not going to be speaking about it, you may be thrown off guard. You maybe presented something and they've been brainstorming other things. So there's a risk involved, but I like to take risks. What about accent? It is observed that there is a tendency for people to put on an accent while presenting. I think you should speak as clear as you can and not too slowly, not too fast. Practice thought groups and rhythm so that you're understood. But don't worry about your accent. Pronunciation is more important. I think accents are charming and wonderful, but you do want to make sure that you're understood. All right, so that's why you have to practice, do the practice. And when you first write your presentation and then you read it or speak it, you want to make sure that you're reading or practicing in thought groups, because it's hard for people to understand when you speak like this, right? So you want to speak in thought groups. It's the rhythm of English, and you need to practice that. Okay, good. What should be the standard of the language for the presentation? Once again, you have to think about your audience. I had a very wide range of audience today. So I tried, I hope that I was successful in having something for students, as well as teachers, as well as researchers, something. So I don't think there can be somebody just presented. So anyway, so the standard should be according to your audience. And if you have a varied audience like me, I try not to use a lot of slang. And if I'm not sure if they understand the words, I try to give definitions like register and pine for if I'm not sure about those things. So if my audience is international, I try to use very little slang. And I try to keep my English simple, but interesting. And I try to not use too many. Remember, idioms are less formal. So if you use a lot of idioms, you have to be careful. If you're speaking to all people who you grew up with, that's different. You can use idioms and you can use slang. But so the standard of the language has to be according to the audience. Most of the time, you want to be simple and clear and interesting. Okay. What if there is a language barrier? Well, there often is, isn't there? When, especially if you're teaching and you have students who come from different backgrounds, maybe they have different home native languages. You just have to be more simple. It does depend on what kind of presentation as far as the language barrier. But I say use simple words and lean forward, show them that you care, and try to relate to them, especially if there is some kind of a barrier. I'm going to put in, let's see if I can.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I have a doubt related to the pronunciation of English. Is the standard pronunciation of English necessary to sound professional or intellectual? What is your opinion about that?
Well, my opinion is very open-minded, because I believe that there's American English, British English, Indian English, Australian English. We have different Englishes as our world actually becomes smaller. And so as far as professionalism goes, I think you need to try to be international, and you need to learn about the organizations who you are dealing with. But I don't think, as long as you are clear in your pronunciation and people understand you, I don't think they care if you're from India or America or Canada or Australia. But you need to be understood. So if you're not sure if you're understood, have somebody from another country or something listen to you and give you good feedback. Because I am around a lot of Indian people, and I have learned to understand many accents. But my husband, who is here in India with me, but he is home more because he's writing a book, he doesn't have so much experience, and sometimes he really has difficulty understanding. So you want to be understood. That's the most important thing. I hope
Thank
I
you so
answered.
much, man. That was so enlightening. Thank you.
You're welcome. I wanted to give you, I wanted to give you an email address that you can use if you think of questions. We have a language center at St. Joseph's. And I want to put it in here, but it's not giving me a place to, maybe it will come later. Let me answer these questions and I'll tell you at the end. What's your take on using high sounding words in classrooms? like words that are pretentious, and is that what you mean? This is Noble Polyeth. What do you mean by high sounding words? Like pretentious words, like power over instead of power under? Is that what you mean? Okay, well, I'm not sure if I understand. Yes, okay, he or she said yes. Okay, so I don't like to sound pretentious and arrogant. So I think you do need to improve the vocabulary of your students, but I don't think that they should be put down. I think we need to serve them to become all that God created them to be. And so sometimes high sounding words don't have meaning. They just sound so academic. I'm not a very academic person. And so that's my take. Let me see if there was some other questions there. Did I answer your question, Noble? Let's see. If we give more personal events or stories to the audience, will it be more personalized for them, or how we could make it interesting? Yes, I think personal stories are great. As you know, you want them to be relevant so that you can tie it into your message. And if you don't have something personal, but you heard, maybe you had some colleagues or something, at least you want to be able to tie it into the message. Okay, that's what I think is important.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes.
I'm Anita Jain from Odisha. Your presentation was really great. I mean, we wanted to know so much about you, and you said us about yourself through your presentation with examples. I was glad.
Oh,
my question is, ma'am, is silence communication or miscommunication?
Now, what is your question? I didn't understand your question. There was
my question is, it is said silence is a way to communicate. My question is whether silence is a way to communicate or miscommunicate.
Well, it does depend on the register, the time and the situation. I think it could be either. I think some people are really uncomfortable with silence.
Okay.
But at the same time, I think silence is good. But in a presentation, it's not always so good because people get uncomfortable. Sometimes they get impatient. Now, Indians are the most patient people that I've ever met. You are so wonderfully patient. But still, silence can be awkward for some people. So you have to be careful of the situation.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I want to continue. I hope I answered your question. Noble is continuing with the how. So let me just say one more thing about the high sounding vocabulary. We want our students to learn new vocabulary, but they have to learn vocabulary that they're going to use. So if the high sounding words are relevant and important and they will use them, then they can even use a chart, you know, where they write in the chart, they can have the word, and then they can have something that helps them to remember the word, and then they should write a sentence. Look up the KIM process, K-I-M, keyword, information, memorizing, and then S for sentence. If they can use it, they're going to learn it. But if they can't use it, they're not going to learn it anyway. They just know the definition. So I think that you can motivate your student community to increase their vocabulary by giving them higher vocabulary words that have meaning to them. If they don't have meaning to them, they're not going to learn them anyway. So you need to show them how something is relevant to them. Right? If I want you to learn the word negotiate as far as English communication is concerned, not negotiate contracts for business, but if I want you to learn others, they have to use it. So that's how you can motivate them, by showing them how they can use it. Okay? How to improve on debating skills and writing it. Oh, That's a good one. I probably don't have time to talk too much about that, but this is the exact thing I was talking about. When you're learning about register and you think about the subject, you need to think about the purpose of what you're doing. Are you informing, persuading, and debating is one of those purposes. So you need to learn the words that we use that have the specific function of debate. Even if it's transitional phrases like, well, I understand what you're saying, but on the other hand, so you need to learn those things. So you can learn about words that we use for persuading, that's the function of English. I love teaching about the function of English rather than just the grammar of English, because you need to learn about the functions for things like debating and writing about it. So the first thing that I would say, this is Manasvi, the first thing that I can say is study that, find out the function words that we need for debates. That's what I would start with. And learn to present yourself using the phrases that we say. Why won't this let me make a comment here? I want to comment and I want to give you an email address, but it won't let me. Let me try it one more time. There. langcr.sjcw@gmail.com. Okay, so this is we're starting a language center at the St. Joseph's College for Women here in Vizec, and this would be a good email address for you to use if you have questions, okay, that I didn't get to answer today. So I'll do my very best. I'm pretty good a communicator. I usually respond in some way. If I don't know the answer, I'll tell you. Anyway, so I think we have just a couple minutes left. Is there anything else? Do different slangs in English affect the speech and standards of speech? Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes with my MA students, we're doing some classes online right now during the COVID, during our lockdown. And so sometimes we go over idioms and sometimes they don't know them. So imagine if I was using idioms or slang that somebody else didn't know. So it absolutely affects the speech. So I try, and if I'm not sure, I even will Google the meaning and is it used in India, or I'll ask one of my colleagues, do you understand this phrase? I should have asked them when I said hello stranger. Hello strangers, I should have asked them. I just I'm so used to saying hello stranger to somebody I haven't seen in a while, and that's all it means. But anyway, so yes, slang and idioms affect your speech and your standards because they're less formal and not everybody understands the same slang. And so be careful with that. I did a talk once for a group of journalists at Andre University on seasoning your English. And idioms are a way that you can season your English, but you do have to be careful. So you have to check your audience and check with other people. Just say, I want to use this idiom. Do you think most people know what it means? And find out before you do that. Yeah. What is your stand on the use of mother tongue while teaching English in a class where students come from different backgrounds? Okay. I want to, thank you, Reno Joy, for asking about that, because I used to be English only in the classroom, right? When I'm teaching English only. But I don't feel that way anymore, and I haven't for years, because I think speaking the mother tongue to help them shows that you care. It shows that their language is valuable. That's where they come from. It's their mother tongue. So I wouldn't, you want to do it. So if you're going to offer an explanation in their mother tongue, say it also in English. All right. But I am not opposed to using it in the classroom. But if you have people from different backgrounds and you don't know some of their mother tongues, it's a little bit harder. But you maybe can ask some of the ones that are at a higher level. You can say to them, I had a group of students at the community college by St. Joseph's where I work, and some of them knew very little English. And so I would ask some of the others, well, how do you say this in Telugu? How do you say noun in Telugu? Because I wasn't getting across to them what a noun was, you know? So I'm fine. I love languages. I think that they are beautiful doors of opportunity for relationships. So use them and care for them, but keep the focus on English. But use it as a tool. Good question. Ma'am, do sounding like natives really required to attract the audience? No. No, being understood and having a message they want to hear is what attracts the audience. So when you're thinking about your presentation, think about, why do they need to hear this? Well, how is this going to benefit them? Because there's got to be some way, even if you're talking about grammar, okay? The least favorite topic, right? All right. It is 12:59, and I know you all want to go have your lunch. And I just want to end by saying thank you for giving me this wonderful privilege opportunity. And you've been a great audience.
Ma'am, it was a pleasure, ma'am. One last question can I ask, ma'am?
Okay.
Ma'am, is pronunciation very important while we are talking to anyone? Because most people definitely say that the pronunciation is wrong. How much can a pronunciation affect your presentation?
Well, I'll tell you, the reason I say it's more important to be understood through pronunciation than accent is because stress is very important in English. And let me just give you a very quick example. I had a student once, and she was telling me about her little girl. And she said, my little girl went to the lemon tree school. And I had this picture in my mind of this tree with lemons, you know, coming down off the tree. And I could not figure out what kind of tree she was talking about. And then I finally realized she was talking about an elementary school, because the stress is on men, elementary school, right? So,
ma'am, but
that's why
ma'am, sorry,
pronunciation.
as you said that there are different versions of English. We have an American English, we have Australian English, we have Indian English, but the pronunciation will differ according to the accent also.
Yes. So, I mean, obviously, we're going to have some changes. I mean, I think that you say automobile and we say automobile.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. The word is still understood. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And if one thing I like to do in my classrooms is a comparison chart, because a comparative analysis shows you the different pronunciations without being critical. We don't want to be critical. I'm not saying I'm saying it the right way, right? But if I say, I know that in Britain they say privacy and in America they say privacy, if I know that I have a mixed audience, I can even say that. I can say, well, according to our privacy issues or privacy issues, I can even say it both ways. So it may or may not affect you, but it's good to learn about it, especially depending on your audience. I have lived in England, so I know a little bit about British pronunciation, which has helped me in India. So
thank you very much, ma'am. It was a pleasure.
Welcome.
It was a pleasure talking to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much, Vicky, ma'am.
I guess we have to. Yes.
Thanks a lot
Thank you,
for
ma'am. So informative session. Thanks a lot.
patiently listening
Yes.
to all the queries of our participants and answering them. Participants, we have already posted the feedback form through the chat box of Google Meet and the description box of YouTube live stream. Please fill the forms and submit within 1 hour from now to ensure the attendance and receive the e-certificates.
And plus, I want your feedback.
Yes. You know, we have around 1,162 registration for this, and it shows how the academicians are waiting for such events. Thank you very much for making this
session a great success. You
It
all,
was. Oh, thank you so much.
Vicky ma'am, and all
Thank
my
you all very much.
participants, you all stay healthy, stay happy, and wait for our next international webinar that is going to be in July 2020. Right now, I invite Ms. Grishma KP to propose vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. During this pandemic, when all hopes darkened, technology and online resources became our light. I thank Lord Almighty for this opportunity. An international webinar was a collective dream of our department. It would not be possible without Vicky A. Hale. Being an English language instructor and English language fellow alumni, US Department of State, she was the apt person to deal the session. I wholeheartedly thank her for allotting time despite her busy schedule. St. Mary's College, Thrissur had always been a host for constant development and technical support. Our dear principal, Sister Dr. Maggie Jose, always encouraged us to fulfill our dreams. I thank her for her constant support for this webinar. I also extend our sincere gratitude to Department of Vocational Studies and Jyotida sir and Avinash sir for providing us with technical support throughout this endeavor. Last but not the least, I thank all the attendees who made this webinar a successful one. Thank you.